The fate of the galaxy after Mass Effect 3 is still a mystery, but yesterday we got a sneak peek into what the future does look like. The Krogan Civil War is an event from the future, according to Gamble. But how did the Krogan get here again? In my latest theory video, I explore the possibilities of what happened to the mass relay system and the Citadel after the blast from the Crucible, because we really don't know. I also unfortunately think the reality of any story set after Mass Effect 3 is going to have to canonize a few events to move the story and galaxy forward. The Krogan genophage is one of them, which I truly think would inevitably been cured regardless. Whether it be from Mordin and Malon's data, a genetic mutation like what's happening in Andromeda, or some other cure being created, Shepard was just a catalyst, but evolution, nature, and Krogan determination were always going to find a way. So let's assume in the future that the Krogan are not suffering from the severe effects of the genophage, and they're having plenty of new children and rebuilding their people. So the real question is how? What did that expansion look like? And why did it lead to a civil war? I think we have three possibilities. Following the events of Mass Effect 3, and the Council's inaction and favoritism of their own races, on top of their lack of help and ignoring the problem, likely made the galaxy revolt in some fashion. I can't imagine after everything that the Krogan had to do to get a cure, and how they helped the galaxy once again, they would not demand a spot on the Council. And if they didn't get one, I can't see them not doing something about it, especially if Rex was around. With a potential power vacuum after everyone would have lost faith in the Council, and after seeing what all of the races were capable of, what did the political landscape after Mass Effect 3 look like? Were they fighting for resources after Palaven, Earth, and Thessia were destroyed? Were leaders from the war stepping up to demand political advancement? And what did the Mass Effect relays and Citadel look like after the Crucible blast? What if they were destroyed? Gamble does say that everything is connected, which brings us back to the trailer in 2020, where we see a destroyed relay floating in debris. Then in 2022, we see the vacuum dock relay being built. Why, we don't know, and who built it, we also don't know. But there seems to be several connections to the mass relays, both of them being destroyed, but also rebuilt. After the Reaper War, I think the galaxy would be more distrusting of the mass relays after learning how the Reapers were using them and how they came to be. So maybe they would have inevitably wanted to create their own, especially after having access to the technology to do so. But did they also rebuild them maybe because they simply had to? Did the Crucible blast destroy the mass relays and splinter the galaxy? We've seen 4 possible Krogan so far. First, the Rex-looking Krogan in the armor that we recognize from the original trilogy in the 2021 poster. Then in 2022, we also see the other concept art that shows a Krogan with some kind of breathing apparatus, which matches this new artwork. Then in 2023, there appears to be a Krogan in the background of the N7 walking down the hallway. And I think the back of the armor looks similar to the armor that we already know, but the front matches this Krogan from the image. That same year, the N7 Day poster also shows Krogan that have different armor than the one in this new art. These Krogans seem to have familiar, similar armor that we've seen before. And unlike these new ones, these ones look more modern, put together, and more clean-cut. Whereas these ones in this new armor seem to be falling apart, made from repurposed things, and maybe even look a bit scavenged. We're seeing different Krogan split from each other. And maybe this was due to the Civil War. Or maybe this is because the Crucible blast destroyed the relays and the galaxy went dark. No one could travel, no one could communicate, and no one could leave wherever they were after the war ended. And maybe this caused a split amongst maybe all the races, but especially the Krogan, who were just on the cusp of rebuilding their civilization. This image also appears to be on Tuchanka, since Varen are native to Tuchanka. And the background architecture also looks similar to what we've seen on the Krogan homeworld. So my theory is that the galaxy went dark. The Krogan across the galaxy became split, unable to communicate or even meet. So new clans formed and rose to power. They had different customs and beliefs and needs, and they would have needed a lot if the genophage was cured. It makes sense after the galaxy becomes split that political powers would shift, and dominance within each system and within the clans would change. The entire galaxy would look different. Without access outside of their own system, they might have ran out of resources, land, and warred, like ancient Krogans did before, when they caused their own dark age hundreds of years ago, all while they were repopulating from the genophage being cured. I don't like the idea of history repeating itself, but the saying goes, those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. But would the Krogan repeat the same mistakes of their past? I would imagine if Rex and Eve were around, they would have wanted to focus on Krogan society and uplifting them instead of wanting to war and fight. But Reeve absolutely would have supported any fighting and would have started wars over anything because he wanted to return to the old Krogan ways, while Rex wanted to evolve. But Rex is only one Krogan against an entire people with a complicated history, especially with the other races. Would all of the Krogan have wanted to conform and grow and change? Or maybe just those who had lived through the war? The Krogan from the Krogan rebellions are still alive. They knew the hardships of their people and the tragedy of war. They wouldn't have wanted to repeat it. But I imagine you'd also have Krogan who were eager to fight, knowing how hard the Krogan would have fought to get a cure in the first place, and how hard the Solarian government tried to stop it. They would have been resentful, feeling that history was repeating itself, by the Krogan helping to save the galaxy and once again being discarded. Maybe even Krogan born after the events of the Reaper War would feel resentment, learning about their past. Maybe the galaxy didn't understand why the relays were deactivated or destroyed. Maybe that fueled their anger or their fear. Maybe they thought the Council and the rest of the galaxy was choosing to cut the Krogan off, to keep them isolated on Tuchanka. Maybe that's why their guns look like they're from Mass Effect 3, with both the modified Executioner pistol, the AT-12 Raider, and even the Krogan hammer from Andromeda. The Krogan hammer could be from Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, but this version looks to be very similar to the one from Andromeda. Maybe they resalvaged these things, modified them for their own use. They had to make do with what they had. I'll get back to the Krogan hammer in just a second, but I think the future of the Krogan greatly depends on whether Rex or Reeve guided them. But inevitably, I also think that the Krogan would have found resentment regardless, at their past, after years of the genophage, and after having to start over. And how upset would they have been after learning about the bomb that had been planted on their planet without their knowledge? There are so many ways that the Krogan have been manipulated, used, discarded, and threatened. So it's no stretch that after the Reaper War, they would have been furious. Justifiably, they would have been furious. And I think it was only Eve and Rex who could have stopped them from doing more about it. So, is this Rex and Eve's child? Because the color of the eyes is very similar to both Rex's and Eve's eye color. Not Grunts, not Drax, not any other Krogan that we know, but specifically those two. Could he have rebelled against his own father and mother, who wouldn't have wanted another war? Or is this little Urdnot Morden fighting a war that his father inevitably got dragged into, but was too old to lead? We know these Krogan are fighting other Krogan. Is this the side that rebelled? Or is this whoever they're fighting? Or, and this is my second theory, going back to the weapons in this image, does this Krogan hammer that we know of from Andromeda tell us that this could be the Krogan from Andromeda, maybe warring with the Krogan from the Milky Way galaxy? Maybe they even tried to come back to Tuchanka. The Krogan hammer uses Element 0, and these weapons look modified with Element 0, with this blue glow. First, I wonder if this is how the next game will approach how weapons work, but also, could this be a resource that the Krogan fought over? Element Zero isn't available on Tuchanka or anywhere in Arlac space. Instead, there are only 2 planets in the entire system that have Element Zero, Rothla and Mantoon. So they would have to traverse there, they would have to mine the resources, and then bring them back to Tuchanka. Maybe this limited resource is what they were fighting over. Maybe the Element Zero was needed to fix or rebuild a new mass relay, so that they could once again access the rest of the galaxy. But if the connection to Andromeda was possible, maybe they used up all the Element Zero resources and were looking elsewhere. Maybe if the 2 galaxies really do connect, if instant travel was possible, with use of a new vacuum dock relay, maybe they struggled to coexist. Maybe that was the catalyst to this war. The later discovery of a whole civilization of Krogan who cured the genophage on their own. They would have had access to better, more advanced technology as well. And who knows what that could look like after Ryder's story. Maybe it had nothing to do with the relays being destroyed at all, and instead was because one was built between both galaxies. Maybe that is what leads to further tensions. Split cultures, split rulers, and split goals. The clans and cultures would be unrecognizable. But maybe the Milky Way galaxy Krogan wanted to continue to expand and went to Andromeda to do so. Maybe that relay being open even became the floodgates to the reason why the Krogan and other Citadel races are wearing these breathing apparatuses. We've now seen it more than once. You could say these Krogan are just in a war, so of course they need a full mask. But we've seen plenty of them fight without it. I think there's something wrong with Tuchanka's air. It could be from the Civil War, or it could be whatever else is polluting the galaxy and requiring everyone else to wear masks. The Krogan hammer is also modified, usually designed to be used by younger Krogan or strong humans. So if the Krogans were fighting, maybe these would be the younger Krogan against the veterans. Grunt versus Rex, Drac versus Grunt. Or maybe Grunt learned from Rex and he wouldn't be an idiot. Maybe this is a brand new Krogan we just haven't seen or heard of. Maybe this Krogan is even a companion. A companion who has joined this new N7, and maybe isn't even involved in this civil war anymore. Could this be an event of the past? If Mass Effect 5 does take place over 600 years into the future, that's a lot of time that needs to be filled. That's a lot of history to write. This could be one of those events, bridging the gap between then and now. Maybe even connecting to the lore of whatever the show is about. Maybe the show is another bridge, and everything truly is connected, leading us to the next game. My third theory is the most basic one, because I think it's the most inevitable. At the end of the Reaper War, the Turian bomb would have been deactivated, the Shroud would have been destroyed, so any interference with the Krogan would have and should have stopped. But if history is doomed to repeat itself again, if the Krogan begin rebuilding, and they began spreading, even if not in a hostile manner, would the Solarians interfere once again? Would they have tried to intervene? Would the Council, or maybe even a new Council, have tried to step in and manage and control the Krogan, while the veterans of the past wars would have tried to find peace and balance and cooperation with the Council, agreeing to regulations or limits on their expansion and population growth? And would new younger Krogan, or maybe even Krogan who are seeing their people thrive for the first time, would they have opposed this? I could see 2 political factions rising with these 2 movements. One willing to compromise to live peacefully amongst the Citadel races, maybe even garnering them a spot on the Council. And in its opposition, a Krogan who want to live freely, unburdened by Council laws and regulations that would prevent them from expanding and growing as much as they wanted. I think this is the most likely scenario. But unlike the first theory, this would mean that the Council had contact with the Krogans following the war. The relays would have still been accessible and the galaxy would have still been traversable. But ultimately, I think whether the relays exist or if the Krogan become isolated, some version of this will always happen. Krogan wanting to thrive freely versus growing in a designated path. There will always be tensions, and unfortunately, it seems like there might always be war too. There's something very sad about the Krogan having another civil war, or being involved in any kind of war at all. The time for them to regrow and change and evolve was after the Reaper War, under Rex. It's sad to think that Rex could be gone, and that his legacy wouldn't have lasted. That after they no longer had him, they descended into a full-blown civil war. It's tragic to think that they didn't learn from the past. And I hope with another Krogan war, and with the Krogan falling into the mistakes they've already made before, I think there is a dangerous area of writing the Krogan into becoming one-dimensional and stereotypical, where all they know is war and everything the Solarian said is true. That's boring, cliche, and lazy. I want to see the Krogan become more, but I also understand change is hard. If we're going to fall into the only thing the Krogan seem to know, I hope they do something that can still be new and interesting. And I also hope we get a goddamn Krogan romance. The N7-Day blog mentioned romance specifically, which made me happy, so hopefully if this is a companion, we can also see a Krogan romance that people have been begging for. Anyways, I still have more theories about this, and I plan to explore what the future after Mass Effect 3 looks like even more after this. There's so much room for possibilities, and I found this image and concept art really interesting. But let me know what you think. Why do you think the Krogan are in a civil war? And who do you think this is? Do you think this civil war is right after Mass Effect 3? Do you think it's before the events of Andromeda, or even after? What do you make of this image? And did you see something that I didn't? Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all my new channel members. There are so many of you. Remember that you can join the Discord in the link on the membership only page. And you also have access to all my videos first. There's one currently up right now that is members only, so make sure to check that out. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.